Having seen how God's gifts to Israel can enable us to be in celebration, we're now going to think about how they can also enable us when circumstances are going against us and we are in tribulation, as happened for the first believers, because it was not long before a great persecution arose against Messiah's community in Jerusalem. And they were all scattered throughout the region of Judea and Samaria. And whilst their experience was particular to the times they were in, their example can still help us, if only for when we are jostled as we go in the opposite direction to the world. As Yeshua warned the disciples they would be, saying, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." But the experience of the first believers may become far more relevant to us as we draw ever closer to what Yeshua prophesied would happen in the end times, when you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Because though right now we are not greatly constrained by our circumstances as Christians, and we may also be taken before the Great Tribulation begins if we are around for that time, but we could still find ourselves in the time when the tribulation that precedes it begins to develop significantly, about which many in the persecuted church can already testify to, having already experienced what Yeshua then said about how they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. Because this is what Yeshua said will happen before the start of the Great Tribulation, such as it has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. Now, the first believers were far more accustomed than we are to prophetic warnings about great shakings to come. Because some of them, Torah records how they actually happened just as prophesied, and also speaks of others at a level yet to be seen in world history, such as through Zephaniah, who said, "The great day of the Lord is near and coming very quickly. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The shouting of the warrior is there. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of devastating storm and desolation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness." And then through Malachi, who said, "For behold, the day is coming, it will burn like a furnace, when all the proud and every evildoer will become stubble. The day that is coming will set them ablaze." And also through Isaiah, "Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel, full of wrath and fierce fury, to make the earth a desolation and destroy its sinners from it." So, we may need to get much more in touch with what God will yet permit for his purposes to be outworked, especially as he appears to be lifting off his hand of restraint that 2 Thessalonians 2 speaks of, and which opens the way to lawlessness, which will then fulfill the quote from Haggai by the writer to the Hebrews, saying, "His voice shook the earth then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. Now, this phrase, yet once more, shows the removal of those things that are shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. So as in the phrase to be forewarned is to be forearmed, it's good for us to see how the gifts that we've been thinking about can also enable people just like us to not only face tribulation, but also to turn problem into opportunity. Having first been given to Israel that they might shine like a light to the nations, even in the face of the tribulation that came with their calling. About which Paul testified to the potential of saying, but we have this treasure in jars of clay, so that the surpassing greatness of the power may be from God and not from ourselves. We are hard pressed in every way, yet not crushed, perplexed, yet not in despair, persecuted, yet not forsaken, struck down, yet not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Yeshua, so that the life of Yeshua may also be revealed in our mortal body. So with that, let's see what we can learn from how these gifts enable the first believers to face tribulation, beginning with the gift of adoption that they knew flowed all the way from Abraham and on through God's choice of Israel as his firstborn, having said, but you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I've chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend, I took hold of you from the ends of the earth and called from its uttermost parts and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you, not rejected you. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And since you are precious in my eyes, honored because I love you, do not fear, for I am with you. And here's what Paul saw this then meant for those who are in Messiah Yeshua. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall again into fear. Rather, you received the spirit of adoption by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, also heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Messiah, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. So Paul saw confidence to face tribulation as proof of really knowing what it means to be a child of God, who's sure of the help that still flows from his choice of Israel as his firstborn and Yeshua's redemption of it. And then also about how it opens up the experience of the second gift, that of glory, which Peter spoke of like this. Loved ones, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal taking place among you to test you, as though something strange was happening to you. Instead, rejoice insofar as you share in the sufferings of Messiah, so that at the revelation of his glory, you may also rejoice and be glad. And the testimony of the first martyr Stephen about all this was etched into the thinking of the first believers, because Stephen had begun his defense before the Sanhedrin by declaring, brothers and fathers, listen. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran, and ended making the Sanhedrin absolutely furious. But full of the Spirit, he gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God and Yeshua standing at the right hand of God. Stephen's boldness clearly being fueled by his grasp of the third gift, that of the covenants, which began with the covenant God had cut with Abraham and which Yeshua had redeemed through the new covenant that would eventually enable the everlasting covenant to complete the blessing first promised to Abraham. Because being right in the flow of all this, Stephen had evidently taken hold of Yeshua's words, "Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul." And doubtless he was enhanced in his experience then of the fourth gift, the gift of Torah, as it was now written upon his heart, just as the prophecy of the new covenant in Jeremiah 31 said it would be, most likely reminding him of Isaiah's words, "You must not fear or tremble at what they fear." Adonai Zavot, the Lord of hosts, him will you sanctify, and let him be your fear, trembling at him. He will be a sanctuary. Because this would have then opened up the fifth gift for Stephen, the gift of temple service, as he saw how the sanctuary of God now straddled heaven and earth, and for which he would fearlessly lay down his life to enter the everlasting life that Yeshua was welcoming him into. All of which modeled to the first believers how to respond to the tribulation they soon found themselves facing, in which they'd lost just about every worldly thing they owned through being scattered far and wide, but gained the world-changing opportunity to proclaim the good news wherever they then found themselves. None of which would have happened without the tribulation that led to it, and which connected them back to Abraham's own experience of tribulation, about whom Paul wrote, "Yet he did not waver in unbelief concerning the promise of God. Rather, he was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God. He was fully convinced that what God has promised, he also is able to do." And that would have helped lead the first believers into the sixth gift, that of the promises, seeing how they flowed from Abraham's utter confidence in God's promise that a great nation would come from him, even when he was called to sacrifice his only son, who he'd waited an interminable time for. As Hebrews 11 puts it, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. Yes, he who had received the promises was offering up his one and only son, the one about whom it was said, "Through Isaac offspring shall be named for you." And having seen the extent to which God's promise to Abraham had already been fulfilled, and also looked like it was yet going to be fulfilled in a far greater way, this enabled the first believers to then go through much tribulation and to much great effect, knowing they could hold fast the unwavering confession of hope, for he who promised is faithful. And so, however slight our experience of tribulation is relative to that of the first believers, their grasp of the gifts that God had given to Israel and which Yeshua redeemed gives us much to draw from. So that whether our experience of tribulation continues to be slight or becomes very much greater, we are then able to turn problems into opportunities, and through this demonstrate what it really means to be alive to God as a child of God. So with that, let's now think about these three questions. Why did God allow Israel to go through tribulation? Then secondly, how can we prepare for what may lie ahead? And then thirdly, how can we have peace in the face of tribulation and even seize the opportunity of it?